But now that I've been in your house, like I can see, like that's not like, hey, I'm physically mining stuff to make money. That's like part of your personality.
Jesse, when's the bull run? When does it start? When does this happen?
Like, that's a scam. That's a scam. That's a stupid idea. That's a stupid idea. But that's genius, and nobody else can see it because they don't understand the space. But that's going to take over. What do you think is going to succeed the next bull run?
There's a trap that people fall in across all of crypto, but especially maybe in this space. They assume that the one that they got into this go round is going to be a successful next one. It's going to hit new all-time highs.
Instead of like maybe solving random math problems, you're like providing storage to somebody, or you're providing compute to somebody. And there's so many different ways that this could go.
Aside from maybe Bitcoin, it's for everything else, it's something that's desperately missing in the industry, I think.
Decentralized physical infrastructure would be like your jam, because you're all about passive income, and that's where you make it.
I would love to know maybe which are the companies or projects that you specifically see some potential in this space, and why. Hey friends, Andy here from the YouTube channel, your friend Andy, and today on the podcast I have Jesse Eckel. Now between YouTube and TikTok, he has like 500,000 followers. He probably has even more than that across Instagram and Twitter and all kinds of things. People follow him and people like what he has to say, so I am here to talk with him to see what those things are he has to say. So welcome to my living room, Jesse.
It is great to be in your living room. It's an amazing living room.
Thank you. It's not a large living room, but it's our living room.
It is a unique living room.
Thank you. So Jesse is here in my actual physical house because he's here in Austin because we're both going to go to the Permissionless Conference. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yes, permissionless.
What are you the most excited about with Permissionless?
For me, I'm really excited to, I think, meet a lot of people. A lot of people that I follow on Twitter, and just I listen to their opinions and thoughts all the time. I'm also really excited because I feel like a lot of people in the crypto space they think different than the average person. Like, they question a lot of things. They question a lot of systems. Yep. They say, okay, something's been done a certain way for a long period of time, but is there a better way to do it? Or is there a different way to do it? And it started with crypto as a whole. It's like, hey, can we do finance different? But it's, crypto has kind of evolved past that. I think that, the term Web3 is like a thought of like, how can we change things and do them with maybe in a different way that could be better? And kind of questioning everything. So you get a lot of unique and interesting conversations when you're at the conference. And I've been at the hackathon for the past 2 days. Some of those people, they stayed up all night. They're working on different projects that they have 24 hours to kind of build a proof of concept. Talked to one person, they're building a way to crowdsource raising funds for medical procedures. Another person's working on some sort of way to stop scam links. Just simple things. I haven't heard, all of the different ideas. There's a lot of different developers. You can see them coding in there. Yeah, it's cool. There's a lot of life and just electricity there. So
very cool. Now, this is not sponsored by Permissionless or anything. I'm not associated with it, but I am excited about it, and I'm excited because of the two of us, Jesse is by far and away more of the DeFi guy than me. Both of our channels, his talks more often about crypto than mine, but we both talk crypto. But I'm kind of in my own little space over here, and then Jesse's been over here. So I'm excited about this because I want to learn more about all these crazy DeFi things. So I'm curious, what are a few of the things in DeFi, in crypto right now, that have you the most excited, and why?
I feel like the space. Okay, so when you say DeFi, there really needs to be a term to
That's a big term.
Yeah, people have tried to give it the name Web3. I think that a lot of people don't like that because they think it's kind of gimmicky. But there is so many sectors of crypto that have nothing to do with finance. So DeFi would be decentralized finance. There's GameFi, which would be the idea of, and that's probably one I'm really excited about. And I think a lot of people say that. And then they look around and they see the various crypto GameFi games, and they're really bad.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, this is a scam. This is stupid. And it's just early prototypes, right? A video game development cycle is 5 to 10 years. It takes a long time. Yep. So you had this concept come out last bull market. The earliest games to market were the worst games to market. They were scammy. There was a lot of lessons learned. But the general concept of GameFi, I think, is going to be massive. And the reason I think it's going to be massive is because if you think about in the real world, think about how we have different things like artifacts, okay? For example, something like the Mona Lisa. So the Mona Lisa is, in essence, just paint and canvas. Okay. But the reason the Mona Lisa has value is because of the history tied to that piece of art. It's not because of the art itself, because if that was the reason, it's worth $850 million. If that was the reason, then why can I go on Amazon and spend $10 to buy a printout of the Mona Lisa? I can spend $10 to buy a printout. I can easily buy canvas and paint. Yet this thing's worth $850 million because of the history directly tied to that specific piece of art. Okay. The internet doesn't have artifacts. There's no way to, and there hasn't been a way to have an artifact on the internet. There's no legacy to like pieces of code. That is until the blockchain came around. And that's one of these things that people don't really understand. Like NFTs have been so scammy, right? Like a lot of people are like NFTs are nothing, but they really aren't. There's actually a lot to NFTs. It's just, again, the first use cases are dumb. The first use cases of the internet were dumb. People were using web pages and they had like flashy graphics on it. And like there was one website where a guy sold off each pixel on the website to make $1 million. And he did. But today you're like, that's stupid. Nobody actually uses a website like that. Well, people do that with NFTs now. But okay, so GameFi, you've never been able to have digital artifacts, but now you can. You can have a very specific artifact digitally. And if you think about the fact that like we spend the majority of our lives today, most people digitally online, they're on their phone, they're on Instagram, they're doing whatever. Like a lot of your social life in general, work life or whatever is online. It's not in person. And so that means things online have more value than they ever have before. And that's a growing trend. That's not declining, that's growing. So think about playing a video game. And this is kind of like an example I came up with. Imagine Kobe Bryant. He didn't, as far as I know, he didn't play Fortnite, but imagine he'd played Fortnite and Warzone. And imagine he had a specific skin he used. Let's say it was like this cool, I don't know, just this cool, awesome skin that he used.
I picture him in a cool basketball-themed astronaut suit.
Okay, basketball-themed astronaut suit. And he played every single game in that suit. And I mean, it was iconic for him. And imagine anyone else could get this suit too. It's like a normal suit in the game, but he just chose it as kind of his thing, right? He passes away, and his family auctions off that specific one. And it's provable that historically he owned it on the blockchain. Do you think that specific one would be worth more than the average one? Say the average one's $20. They can go buy the same one for $20. Do you think the one that he owned would be worth more? And I think, of course it would be.
Yeah.
And so you can see now we have this ability to have history and artifacts on the blockchain. And because of that, I think we're going to unlock this entire other economy, a digital economy that's never been able to exist before. And I think GameFi is going to really bring that in. It's just going to take time, adoption, real good games that people love playing, integrating these things. But when you can play a game and you can, everything you pick up is an NFT. You pick up an apple, like in Skyrim, put it into your inventory, you now have an Apple NFT. Is it going to be worth anything? Probably not. But maybe the developers say, hey, they put like provably 3 of 3 of these like certain artifacts or swords or something in the game. There's only 3 in existence. They maybe have the same like stats as like this other sword that's in the game, but these ones have unique design. Those things would be worth money. You could sell them. If you go find them, you go buy their game, you go play and you find those, you can go, they're worth money. You can go sell them. And they're going to be worth money because you can see that already with trading cards. Magic the Gathering, right? You go play Magic the Gathering. They just did a Lord of the Rings set. This Lord of the Rings set had a 1-of-1 One Ring card. That thing sold for $2 million. That's a piece of cardboard, a printed on piece of cardboard that somebody, if they wanted, if they had a print, the ability to print on cardboard in the same way, they could create a counterfeit that looked identical. Yeah, that one is worth $2 million because it's the authentic one. And on the blockchain, we're going to have the same thing with video game assets. It's going to unlock an entire new economy. I think there's going to be people that are going to spend all day playing video games and they're going to make a full-time living. Not most people, but some people will. And I think a lot of things are going to be worth like 5 cents, 10 cents, $2, just like cards. Some of them are going to be worth 100 and people are going to be stoked like, oh my gosh, I found this thing worth 100. And it's going to be a rare, the few rare things are going to be worth a lot of money. But again, it's a whole new economy. And I think that is really exciting. And I think that's like, it makes sense as such a killer use case for crypto, digital artifacts. So that's one area I'm really excited about. I still think we're a ways off from that. I think we'll see some interesting use cases this next bull run. And I think it's probably the bull run after that or the bull run after that we're going to really see it. So it's a little bit out, but again, really exciting. The other thing that I'm excited about is things like digital infrastructure. So the DPin sector, that's like things like AWS. a lot of people don't know this, but for a long time, the way that Amazon made its money was not through its like selling stuff on its store. It was actually did that at a loss. It was through AWS. AWS is the cloud servers. Okay. The thing about AWS is it takes billions and billions of dollars to set up something like that because it's a really infrastructure intensive. But the DPin sector is kind of like Airbnb. Okay. Airbnb, it's like, I don't remember how many properties they have. It's like, it's a lot. Okay. It's like dwarfs anything that legacy hotels have by like 100-fold. And they couldn't have done that if they bought it all themselves. They did it because they crowdsourced it. Okay. Just like a taxi company couldn't have as many cars in the world as Uber can. Okay. So in that same thought, the DPin sector says, hey, what if we did that with storage? What if we built a cloud that used servers all over the world? And those servers are kind of like miners, right? Kind of like what you do. They're mining, and I'm sure you might be into some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. They're mining for just by saying, hey, I have 100 gigabytes. You can use this, and you get rewarded when people are using that. And so they're building these DPin server networks. There's other things like GPU. GPU is becoming a more scarce resource over time. Not just because of things like the metaverse is, and these kind of things, which the metaverse, a lot of people think of like a Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. But when I think of the metaverse, I think more of like the point at which you spend more of your time digitally than physically. Okay, it's not that you have to wear a VR headset. The metaverse is just living a social life on the internet. And we all do that already. People date on the internet. People make friends on the internet. People have chats on the internet. They do their work on the internet. That is the metaverse. And so all these things require a GPU. But more than anything, AI requires an insane amount of GPU. To the point that like you talk to some of these VC firms, and they have they're like trying to bribe NVIDIA and these companies to get access to huge amounts of GPU so they can train these models. And they can't, even though they have the legacy relationships, because so many people want access and there's just not enough to go around. So that's kind of like the new gold rush. GPU is like the new oil in the AI industry. Well, there's companies like Akash, which what they do is the same kind of concept, but they do it for GPU. Like you have in your house a ton of unused GPU, untapped GPU. And there is that all over the world. It's just kind of useless because there's no way for people to access it. But their idea is, what if we made an a super internet of GPUs where people could tap into these systems? We already have proven models with companies like Render, which they do it for rendering, and it works great. And it works amazing for rendering out like 3D assets and things like that. And so those things are really exciting. There's sectors like DeSci, which that one is maybe the most exciting. I mean, GameFi is really exciting too. But DeSci is pretty close up there, and that's decentralized science. A lot of people don't, and again, this comes from the idea that like in the crypto space, people look at systems and they say, how can we do this different and potentially better? And that is like, if you're wondering like, how does this relate to blockchain and different things like that? There's a core principle of what crypto is what's called layer zero, okay? There's the layer one network would be like a Ethereum, Avalanche. Layer zero would be the social consensus that makes up all of these things, right? Like, how does Bitcoin get an upgrade? Social consensus. Mm-hmm. How does Ethereum get an upgrade? Social consensus. So you have these layer zeros, like what determines when a Bitcoin forked to Bitcoin Cash and normal Bitcoin, which one was the real Bitcoin? Social consensus. Mm-hmm. And so the social layer of crypto is some of the brightest and just weirdest thinking people. And so they're looking at problems from different angles that most people don't. And that's where a lot of this stuff gets, that's where a lot of these crypto projects kind of originate from. And so people are looking at science, which is actually pretty insanely broken. And so science has a couple different issues right now. One of the issues is this publish or perish mindset. So the way that in the academic world that you excel is you have to climb this ladder. And it has to do with like building up your social status through publishing in well-known journals. The thing is, journals want to publish exciting positive results, okay? And so if you're not getting exciting positive results, then you're not getting published, then you're not working your way up. So there's actually a lot of fraud in it. There's since 2013, I might be getting the date wrong, over 8,000 papers pulled for fraud. Because it's really easy to make up things, especially stats. There's something called p-hacking. P-hacking is where you work with statistics For example, if you look, if you were to connect statistics together, you could say that you could see there's a connection with the rise in ice cream sales and murder. Somebody did this, and they're like, "Hey, look at the more ice cream that's sold, the higher murder rates go." And so it's really easy to say ice cream causes murder, but the truth is, it's that that's actually connected more with summer and heat. Causes an excess of murder.
That's going to be the one soundbite I use from you is that ice cream causes murder.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so that's called p hacking. You're connecting things together that like they look like they're related, but they're not. And it's really, they have near unlimited room to do this. And so if you're not actually if you're just trying to get papers published and you're just trying to make a name for yourself, there's really easy ways to do this. There's also what's called the replication crisis, which is that a lot of the research that's done by scientists can't be replicated. Like they do these papers and then somebody goes try to replicate it. They can't. And I don't understand enough about the world to understand exactly what's wrong. The data's not preserved right. It's not done in a way that's replicatable. But this is that's another big issue. And
that's a huge problem.
Yeah. And so, and another big issue in the science space is funding. Researchers spend more time today applying for grants than they do actually doing research. And the problem with this too is that they typically, if you're a researcher, like the way you make money is somebody's got to fund your work. Well, the people that fund the work are the government and these big corporations, and they only fund a certain subset of things that they're interested in, right? And so the governments can be really dangerous because they can say, "Hey, we want you to fund research that in this area," right? Hinting at if your research angles a certain way, right? Maybe it angles against, some of the ways that we're, pumping plastics into the environment or different things like that. You're more likely to get, this grant or whatever. Corporations can be the same way, like, "Hey, we want you to show us the different ways that coffee is good for you or alcohol is good for you." I don't know, different things like that. But also besides that, you have a lot of drug companies that are looking for specific research on things they can make money on. So if you look at a cure or something that helps people that doesn't necessarily isn't very enticing for these corporations, you're not going to see a lot of research in it because no one's going to fund that. Okay, and so you have a funding crisis where researchers skew what they're researching and what they're looking for funding on based on what the market says that they're willing to pay for. So all those different angles kind of leave it to where science at this point isn't functioning at the capacity it could be, right? It still does stuff. We still have breakthroughs. We still have a lot of great things, right? But it's not where it could be. And so DeSci is this concept of how can we fix those things? The replication crisis. Can we fix that by having everything go through a certain process on the blockchain where it's all stored? Can we have collaboration on the blockchain? There's where each person that adds to a certain piece of research, certain body of research, that's documented on the blockchain, so everyone's given their due credit. Can we do funding? That's a great, easy way. If we can get a meme coin to $1 billion, can we, push funding for like maybe some of these niche illnesses that they don't have a wide enough berth for a drug company to be interested because they can't make billions of dollars off of it. But could we find a cure for that? Can we do research into other things besides drugs? That's a big thing. Is like you look at so many of these medical institutions are oriented towards, and I know we've gone way off the rails from crypto, but they're oriented towards funding a one-size-fits-all drug that'll cure an issue. And they don't look at things like, what about your lifestyle choices? What about the way you eat? And those things are massively preventative for most of these issues like heart disease, even cancer. Like there's definitely ways to accelerate your likelihood of getting cancer. And there's definitely ways to limit your likelihood to get cancer based on your lifestyle, right? Are you fasting every night? Are you eating a lot of sugar? Sugar is the food for cancer. Different things like that, right? We don't do a lot of research into those things either. And we have very toxic, poisonous food in the US. A lot of times we figure out these things like mercury, like way too late. We should be catching those things earlier. So DeSci is how can we approach these things from a different standpoint. Decentralized journals that aren't gatekeeping in the same way. By the way, a journal, when you want to publish in it as a scientist, you have to pay to publish in it. To try, and then the person that reads it also has to pay. So they tax it on both ends. So
the world of journaling is something I have looked into and read some articles about and stuff, and it's just wild how that works.
It is. So DeSci is, can we approach this differently? And so I'm really bullish on that for just a humanity. And there's some cool projects in it too. Some really cool projects. And some of them already have like millions of dollars that they've put out into different various bodies of research. That's a brand new one. Like you can look on DeSci, go YouTube it. There's nothing. Okay, that's like cutting edge. But one of the most exciting sectors of crypto, in my opinion, because it could change. If we could make the process of scientific discovery more efficient, that could change the world. And so that gets me pretty excited too.
Very cool. Okay, so that is a lot of things to start breaking down, and actually, there's several things in there that I definitely it was already on my list I wanted to talk about. So let's dig into those maybe individually. But first, let's hear a quick word from this podcast sponsor, Relay. If you're like me, then you're either a small business owner or you would like to start your own business one day. And when you do that, you're going to need a banking solution that's truly built just for your business. That means no fees, no minimum balance, and no bookkeeping problems when tax season rolls around, because why would you want to make tax season even less fun? That's where Relay comes in. Relay is an online banking and money management platform that's a perfect fit for small businesses, and one I recommend. Again, Relay has no account fees, no overdraft fees, and no minimum balances, which means you get to keep more in your pocket. One of my favorite features is that you can get up to 20 individual accounts, including 2 savings accounts, to organize and allocate income for things like day-to-day expenses, investments, or taxes. You can now earn up to 3% APY on savings with Relay savings accounts. You can create virtual and physical debit cards for you and your employees in seconds. And best of all, Relay makes your bookkeeping speedy and meticulous by giving you ultra-detailed transaction data and directly syncing it back to QuickBooks Online and Xero. And so many more amazing features I don't have time to tell you about here. Really, they do a lot. It only takes 10 minutes to apply for a free Relay account, and you can do it online at relayfi.com/yourfriendandy. Again, that is relayfi.com/yourfriendandy. Okay, let's jump into this episode. Okay, and we're back. So we just covered a bunch of things. Well, you kind of gave me an overview. Incredible stuff. Let's start with the first one, because this is something I thought a lot about. I'm excited about, but I have yet to see anything that is super promising, in my opinion. That's GameFi. What you kind of said earlier on is my assessment of games so far in cryptos. They all suck.
Yeah,
they're bad.
They do.
So, like, I want to see some of these like AAA games. I want to see people who are actually established game developers. I just want to see a game on the blockchain, or maybe it's not even on the blockchain, but some functionality of it is on the blockchain, or the rewards are just. Let's put V-Bucks, from Fortnite on the blockchain. I don't know what the answer is, but get an actual fun-to-play game, and then figure out how it's going to fit into the world or something. So I'm curious, what have you seen so far that does have promise, or which ones are you the most excited about, or how do you see the fix to that problem?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, game development cycles take a long time. So they take 5 to 10 years. A really good game like Starfield, they've been working on since like the 90s. So like it takes a long time, right? And in Starfield, I think on IGN only a 7 out of 7 or 7.7.
It's got some mixed reviews, yeah.
Yeah. So good games take a long time to build. So that's one thing. That's one reason we haven't seen it. Another thing is it's a new technology. So of course, people don't rush to adopt new technologies. There's the Dyson vacuum. The guy that invented that, he spent 10 years in his entire life savings to build a bagless vacuum. He brought it to the vacuum companies and he's like, look what I did, and he just thought he was saved. He'd finally done it. His marriage was on the rocks. Like he had nothing left to his name. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. It works, but we're not interested in it. We make a lot of money off of bags.
Yeah.
And and so he had to go start his own company, Dyson. Now he's a billionaire. So he deserved it. He worked his butt off for that. But the point is that legacy companies aren't super stoked to adopt new and emerging technologies. Usually it's like an incumbent that really wants to prove themselves, that uses it in a way that's useful to them, that takes off and kind of sparks it. So I think we need a spark. Alluvium is an interesting game. They're probably the closest thing to a AAA game. It's basically like Pokemon, but every Pokemon you catch is like a NFT collectible, but it's like really good looking. Like the graphics are like top tier AAA. These guys have been working on this since before the last bull run. Like it's been a long time. Their open world, their mechanics, everything looks good and looks fun. They put a lot of thought into the game. That could be one that takes off. There's another one called what's it called? 0x I'm blanking on the name. There's another one's kind of like a Fortnite type game. I really don't know what it's going to be that catches. I think of like Pokemon Go, how that kind of like took the world by storm. Everyone was playing it. We're all out in the street, like not getting hit by cars trying to catch Pokemon. It's gonna be something like that, I think, where it really takes the world by storm. It hits all the news cycles, and then that's gonna start a wave of development. And then that wave of development's like a new batch of seeds that's going to take, years for that to kind of come to fruition. So it's going to take a couple cycles for it to really take off. That's why I said we'll see some interesting stuff this cycle.
Are you currently positioning yourself for these things? Or are you buying any of these things? Or are you on the lookout for what you think is going to be something like that, and then you're going to invest when the time comes?
That's the hard part. I'm doing infrastructure plays. So like things like Immutable X. If you look at like, they're like a layer 2 blockchain for building games on. But what I really like about them is they're building, like how fast they build. They built this wallet called Passport. It's a wallet that anyone, you don't have to have any crypto experience, can log in through just like an email and have your blockchain wallet, and you could be playing the game. So like, thinking that gamers are going to be, crypto enthusiasts is insane, right? Obviously. And so this makes it so you don't have to be a crypto enthusiast. You can have a blockchain wallet, you can have NFTs, and you have all of that. So I like Immutable X and just different things like that. I think probably Ethereum would benefit. Any of the infrastructure that this stuff's built on is how you position now. And then you're trying to look, you're more paying attention to the space because you know it's going to grow, but you don't really know where things are going to land. So it's difficult at this point to know exactly how to play it.
One thing with the space of blockchain gaming or GameFi or whatever label you want to put on it, that I noticed in the last bull run that I thought was not actually helpful for the space, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, was there's a lot of these games that the entire idea was, play to earn money and stuff like that. And so they were really earn focused, not like gameplay focused, not like let's have fun focused. And so you got all these people who are just grinding away to earn stuff. And if you're in a third world country and you have access to a smartphone or a computer and you can do that, and you can now earn like 10 times what you would normally, well, that's cool. But for anybody else around the world who's not in that position, I feel like that's a very problematic place to be, where that's your only incentive to come on there is just to grind away to earn a little bit of money. I feel like there has to be some balance between doing that and helping those people, but also making something that's fun where you can still get some incentive but maybe it's not directly like, I'm going to pay you for every moment you play. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, obviously a game that you're only playing because you're getting paid is not going to be sustainable long term. But that makes sense as the first emergent of the GameFi sector is going to be like, hey, we'll pay you money to play these games, especially when you're in like more like Ponzi season in crypto, where it works. Like those things work during that season. People were actually making money. They're quitting their jobs to play these games full time. It's just the easiest way to launch a game, right? You don't have to do a lot to get the game going. It's the laziest possible approach. But those things iterate on each other and get more and more complex if they want to succeed. And so now the bar's a lot higher if you want to build one of these games, especially in the bear market. Like it's got to first be a really fun game, or nobody's going to touch it. In a way, almost all games are something like that, where you're essentially grinding for something. It's just usually not money. You're playing Destiny, you're grinding for exotic weapons, your legendary weapons, the right rolls, the right armor, the right stats. Skyrim, same thing. You're grinding for a certain skill tree or whatever. So you're always grinding for something. And so and I think you're going to have that. And the game's obviously going to be more powerful if you're grinding for something that's not costing you money, not costing the game money, right? But as games, develop, it still would be superior if you have all those same characteristics. You're still playing Skyrim. It's still awesome. But at the same time, you're gaining assets you could sell. Even if they're not worth a lot of money, the fact that you own them and people might be willing to pay you for them. You get a rare armor set. You spend a long time grinding. You build out that armor set. Somebody else doesn't want to spend the time grinding for that armor set. You can go and you can sell them that armor set. Those kinds of things are inherently going to be eventually more valuable. And there's some questions about balance, I think, with a game. Like, you don't want people to be able to necessarily cheat to be able to like jump ahead. But at the same time, people have been doing that I played Sims. I knew the infinite money hack. It wasn't as fun to play that way. It was more fun to play where you actually built that up over time.
Quick aside, were you the type of person who puts your Sims into walled off, no door access rooms and let them starve to death, or a pool with no ladder? Did you ever do any of that?
No, I felt too bad, even though they're fake. My sister did that though.
Your conscience got in the way. I love it.
My conscience did get in the way. No, I just built a lot of the robots. So
very good. So okay, I like that. I like the ideas you're kind of introducing there with the whole GameFi thing. I can get behind some balance. I can get behind that kind of back and forth. Now, going back a second, you did say you think that some of this stuff will come into fruition, maybe not in this next bull run, but maybe the one after. Is that kind of the timeline you're looking at?
Well, some will take off here, but I'm talking about like when you're looking at it in its prime. I think it's potentially not even the one after this bull run, but the one after that. Like you're talking a decade for prime, because it just takes time for all these things to emerge. They're going to get it wrong in so many ways in the beginning. They're going to mess things up. And it's going to take a while for like the standards around these things to emerge, right? Because there's got to be standards. You're going to have assets that are going to be able to cross over into different games. Those kind of things just take a while to be built. And so, I think it's going to be a while before we're going to really see it, functioning at an amazing capacity. But I think this next cycle, you're definitely going to see like certain things take off. I think it's possible you'll see games like Illuvium and some of these other ones do well. People make a lot of money selling these things, probably too much money, and then it kind of corrects itself. But yeah, it feels like every cycle there's something like that. First cycle is not first cycle, but when I first got started, it was CryptoKitties. That took off. People were paying like tens of thousands of dollars to breed these just like JPEGs that did nothing. This last cycle, we had like more, games that did more. You had Axie Infinity. You actually could do stuff in the game. It was still pretty dumb, but they had $1 billion in their war chest at one point. They got hacked for like 600 million though. So that was not good.
I love crypto.
Yeah. And so I think this next cycle, you'll see an iteration where it's better than that. And people are like, oh, this is actually a really fun game. Like I actually enjoy playing this, but they'll get certain things wrong, or it'll be inaccessible to most or something like that. And then the cycle after that, it'll improve and improve and improve.
And there's probably even a little bit of a trap in what you just said, because certainly there are things that exist right now that will exist in the next couple of cycles, and maybe Illuvium, maybe one of these others. My friend Nicholas, he has some planets or land in Big Sky. That's
Big Time?
Big Time.
Yes.
I don't I'm new to this space. Big Time. There's some of these that might exist in the next ones, or maybe they die off. And there's a trap that people fall in across all of crypto, but especially maybe in this space, and that they assume that the one that they got into this go round is going to be a successful next one. It's going to hit new all-time highs. So I'm curious, how do you navigate that? How do you go? Some of these things I think really are going to be here for years and years, but other ones haven't emerged yet, or what?
Well, okay, it depends on who you are. So if you're an investor, how you navigate it is you look at just the next bull run. What do you think is going to succeed the next bull run? And you're looking to make money between now and then make sure you sell off either enough to cover your initial investment, or just take your full profit during the next bull run and then wait for the bear market to hit and, go there. And that's easier said than done, right? Like your greed gets a hold of you. You start believing these crazy narratives that like the bull run will last forever and different things like that. And especially with GameFi, that's going to be a sticky narrative, because it's like, well, this is video games. This ain't going away, guys. But I think you need to realize that people are going to get too greedy. It's going to hype up and it's going to hype down. And so take your profit at some point, at least take your initial off the table. And that's how you handle it. It's just looking each bull run in the future. If you're a gamer, then just go play the games that are fun. And if you're enjoying playing it, then, that's all that really matters, right? And if you make money at the same time, that's great. So,
okay, let's change gears, because this next topic that you've already kind of gave us a nice introduction to is one I already really want to talk to you about, because, like I've said to you, and I think I even said in the intro here, I feel like our channels in terms of what we talk about in crypto are fairly far apart. And we have a lot of common ground, but I'm just interested in maybe different things on the surface than you are that you talk about. However, until you made a video about DPin, and when I watched that one, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have a lot of common ground here, because I'm actually into a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
I just never had a word or a thing to label as until I watched that, and then I went through Twitter and I saw these graphs of DPin and stuff. So decentralized infrastructure. Let's talk a little bit about that. So go in deeper about why what one or two of the biggest opportunities you're trying to take advantage of, and why?
Yeah, so decentralized physical infrastructure would be like your jam because you're all about passive income, and that's where you make it because that's kind of like the evolution of like proof of work mining in a lot of ways. Except
it's what proof of work mining. I love proof of work mining, but it is one thing. Aside from maybe Bitcoin, it's for everything else. It's something that's desperately missing in the industry, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree because instead of like maybe solving random math problems, you're like providing storage to somebody, or you're providing compute to somebody. And there's so many different ways that this could go. What is it? Helium has always been kind of scanning, but they've just they're working on their own 5G network.
I've been reinvigorated about Helium. I was not on board with them, and when all the changes in IoT fell to the wayside, but now they've actually launched 5G in Miami, and they're trying to expand, and like $5 a month for
service, and then that's like crazy, and it picks up from like T-Mobile and stuff like that, and so that's pretty crazy. Actually, that's not like, hey, this is a niche crypto thing. This is like, hey, this is actually pretty insane. And so different things like that, I'm like, wow, this is crazy, and so useful too. So what was your original question?
Oh, I just maybe a better question would be, now that we're talking about specific things, I would love to know maybe which are the companies or projects that you specifically see some potential in this space, and why.
So the places I'm placing bets in the DPin sector, because I'm not doing it the same way as you are, where you're like physically mining things. Which
I gotta get you on my side.
Well, you're dominating, but now that I've been in your house, like I can see, like that's not like, hey, I'm physically mining stuff to make money. That's like part of your personality. Like you have a server for your DVD collections, Blu-ray collections. So,
I'm a pretty big nerd in that way. Yes.
Yeah, so that's very much you. But Akash is one that I'm really bullish on, and that has a lot to do with AI. AI is really hot right now, right? It'll cool down at some point, but compute is not going away. That is a scarce resource. The more that we build, the more compute we need. It's just like storage. Megabytes used to be fine, and then you need gigabytes. Now you need terabytes. Compute's the same way. It's going to keep scaling, and it's going to become more and more scarce. And so if you found a way to pull more oil, access a just vast amount of unused oil in the world that no one else can tap into, that is amazing. That is incredible, and that's what Akash is doing.
So when AI was getting some, obviously AI has been around forever, but when it was actually in the mainstream getting some steam, and I just started looking into it, started realizing, oh, this is powered by GPUs, mainly for all this compute. It's like a light bulb moment for me, and I go, oh my God, if the first crypto project that very broadly in mass allows any GPU miner, anybody with GPUs, period, to install on their computer some software to then let it be sent out as compute, and they get paid for it, because you can pay GPU miners a fraction of what you pay AWS or any other or NVIDIA for their big compute farms, and they still are making 10x what they would be mining crypto. The first project to actually turn that on in mass is just going to absolutely kill it.
There's a company, is like a couple guys, they have no product. They have no, like, they haven't built a company yet. They were able to, at the height of the AI craze, raise close to $1 billion, I believe. And they spent most of it building out GPU superclusters. And so, and that was part of their pitch, is like, we're going to use it to buy a bunch of GPU. And they're like, oh, great. We know that's insanely valuable. And so when I hear things like that, I'm like, man, Akash is like, you don't have to go buy, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of GPUs. You can just tap into it. You can rent it. And wouldn't that be more valuable? Wouldn't that be, and especially if you can get it cheaper. And that those GPU superclusters they buy, like in 3 years, they're going to be outdated. They're going to have to re-up on it because the technology is going to move. And so for me, I'm like, this could be massive. But more, I guess, what I'm always looking at, again, is next cycle. So I'm like, okay, AI is big right now. We have next cycle coming. I believe it's going to happen in the next 2 years. And so when next cycle hits, and then people figure out what Akash is, because nobody's paying attention right now to crypto. It's anyone you talk to about crypto that's not in space, they're like, oh, I thought that was dead, or that's a scam or whatever. Once they figure that out, I think the narrative alone is what will push it higher. I think, and if they have a working product by then, then they have the physical, like, actually demand to push it higher too. And so that one I'm just really excited about, because I see the need, I see why the narrative and all those things coming together. To me, I'm like, this could be pretty big.
So I'm not very familiar with Akash, but I know you like them and talk about it, so it's on my list of things to research. But I have been big into Flux, which is doing, from what you're telling me of this, it does a lot of the same thing. They're actually about to launch their software that will let people adjust their Windows desktops and stuff do all this AI compute, but they also they have a WordPress integration, so you can just install your WordPress website across the Flux nodes and stuff. There's storage, hosting, things like that. They're trying to be a decentralized Amazon Web Services, basically. Okay. So yeah, I'm very interested in this. I want, obviously Flux is one of my biggest positions in my portfolio. I'm very excited about what they're doing because they're checking a lot of these boxes you're saying. You should definitely look.
What's the market cap for Flux?
I don't know today what it is.
What was the last time you checked?
Couple hundred million, 300 million maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it.
They're ranked 200 something on the charts maybe.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyways, but I want to add more positions there because, I don't want to go all in on one single thing.
Because that's the hard thing is there's usually, if there's ever a clear winner, the other ones like definitely benefit. Mm-hmm. But nailing that clear winner is always the jackpot, right? And so is that going to be Akash? Is that going to be Flux? Is that going to be Render? Is that going to be, I don't know, all of the different ones in this sector.
Like Render, they've already opened up some of their stuff to these AI companies, but they just aren't letting anybody just into their network yet. So there's just like too many of these are still closed or not. And just like, who's going to be the first one to like just say, download this executable and you're on the network? Or
they're not good at sales. Like that's one of the things that like a lot of these things that they have a working prototype that works great. Mm-hmm. Or some of these like storage companies, right? They are significantly cheaper than AWS, but like their sales per month are like a couple $100,000, which is still a lot of money. But for how what they could be, it could be hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. They're just not good at doing sales, especially enterprise level sales. And so they need to, I think, adapt on that front too. Is like hey, focus on selling because there's so many companies that have really bad products, and they sell them all day long. Mm-hmm. To these companies because they're just good at sales. So,
yeah, that's the other thing too. Yeah, one that not only who can crack the code of getting all these GPUs online and onboarded with these projects, because GPU miners they're constantly upgrading. So you don't need to have a company that just buys $1 billion supercluster of GPUs and goes, oh shit, it's out of date next month.
Yeah,
you got GPU miners all around the world who are always upgrading. So just like throw it on them. So there's that aspect, but also, yeah, the adoption, whatever, getting the word out there, the sales aspect, I totally see that because many of these are fractions of the price of AWS for hosting and stuff. It's just people don't know about it and people don't trust it yet. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens next with that. What gets that snowball rolling down the hill?
Yeah, I think, we saw the same thing with crypto protocols like 2017, 2018. They were mostly white papers with grand ideas. Mm-hmm. And then in between 2017 and 2020, you had newer entrants come into the market and they ate their lunch, dominated those old protocols because they actually did the work and actually built functional products. And so either they'll succeed or maybe they're the flagship and then the next generation succeeds. But eventually somebody comes to market with working product. Again, the whole industry is very emergent. Just like the internet, early internet, they did not know what they were building. They didn't even know what it was going to be used for fully. They had a hard time describing it. And if you can watch this old clip of it's Bill Gates talking on the Tonight Show or something like that. And the guy's like, okay, so tell me what the internet is. And he's like, well, it can enable you to do things. And he's like, well, what can you do? And he's like, well, you can read the news on the internet. And then the guy's like, pulls out a newspaper and he's like, but I can read the news on a newspaper. And that's, so why is this revolutionary? He's like, well, you could watch, listen to baseball on it. And he's like, well, let me tell you about this crazy thing called the radio, where I can already do that. Yeah. And so he's just making fun of Bill Gates. He's like, this is stupid. And you hear the same kind of things about crypto. It's like, why do we need this? We already have this. And you hear some of the same kind of arguments. And so it took a while for the internet to really emerge out of that cocoon and people to see that obviously this is a crazy innovation. And so I think in the space with DPin or any of these things, it just takes a while. It takes a lot of iteration, a failure, but like it's one of those things where it's like it collapses here and it builds here and just you don't really notice it, but over time, eventually it turns in this really intricate, complex, resistant, resilient, beautiful thing. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around how it could go from A to B. But we've seen it with technology time and time again.
Humans are such in the moment, present minded creatures. We have such trouble with long term thinking. Your analogy to the internet, that's one I always use, because the internet, ARPANET, the first iteration of the internet, was the 60s.
Yeah.
And we're just now where we are today, where it's, ubiquitous and everyone uses it and stuff.
And everyone says, okay, stupidest argument ever is like, we've had the blockchain for a decade now, and look what it's built. Like, it's time to call this a failure. And you just pointed it out. You had the internet from the 60s to 2000. That's 40 years. And guess what? Didn't do any. I mean, like, there was no real world use cases like we see today. I mean, there was like governmental things and different things like that, but not what we see today. No. And so and they're talking about specifically Bitcoin, because smart contracts and all that came that's 2015. So it is still really early days with crypto. And
electric cars, GM with the first mainstream go to your dealership, buy an electric car was like 92 or 93, and we're just now in 2023 at the tipping point where maybe more people are considering electric than combustion. We're just now there, and that was in the 90s.
Charging stations, charging stations are probably the biggest thing, because you got to be able to travel across, get from A to B and use your car. And so, people, again, they're too impatient. They don't give these things enough time, and they want direct answers of like, it's got to be obvious or else I don't what is it? And they don't see that like some of the most technologically like revolutionary technologies, said it weird, end up being things you don't quite understand. Even AI, if you talk to people that like the people that built like OpenAI, they don't fully understand what they've built. They don't actually fully understand how it works. It's kind of scary if you think about it. They know it works and they know how to kind of finesse it, but it's kind of more like think about the early, people mixing different like herbs and stuff for healing and medicine. They understood what healed people. They didn't understand why it healed people. And it's kind of like that with AI right now. Like, they understand that kind of in general how to make it better. They don't fully understand exactly how it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, when you have an AI company that has to put together your own internal panels and groups that are there to regulate yourselves, like decide, we probably should have AI like explain step for step how to build a bomb, for example, or this or that. When they're trying to put in their own safeguards because they don't quite understand what it is they're building, they just know it's part of the future and they want to be a part of that. That's when you're like in a truly emerging technology space.
Yep.
Which is wild. And so on this topic, one thing that's always kind of fascinated me about crypto, and I love just talking about, futurism and stuff with crypto. And I'm curious where you fall on this. I love crypto. I love the idea of putting, having blockchain for a bunch of stuff. I love all these use cases, and I so very much want to see many of these things actually get adopted and used and work. However, I am not someone who believes everything should be on the blockchain. I don't think blockchain is our magic bullet. I think it's terribly inefficient for a lot of things in our daily life, and certain things should never be on the blockchain. But other things, this was meant for this use case. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about that idea.
I think, like I said, the social layer of crypto is a lot of people that look at problems and say, how can we look at this from a different viewpoint? And I think there is an intrinsic kind of like desire to integrate crypto technology into it. I think people struggle because that's their identity, right? And so they want to integrate their identity into it. So I think one part of like why that exists is that. I think the other part is like people are just trying things. They're saying, hey, what would this do? How would this function? Because again, not everything's as obvious as people want it to be. Sometimes you don't really even know if it's going to work or not based on your like theory of it. You got to go test it and try it. And sometimes you're shocked at what works and what takes off and what doesn't. And so I think that people are just experimenting, and I think that's a healthy part of the process. And I think you need to see people trying and experimenting with a lot of these different things just to see what does work. NFTs, that caught a lot of people off guard. And I don't think the current iteration is going to be what's it, but I think people are starting to see what it could become. And that took a lot of testing and like a lot of weird things and people just putting themselves out there. And even things like DeSci or, DPin and all this is again, testing. A lot of it will go to the wayside. But what sticks around is going to be pretty cool. So, yeah, I agree with you. Not everything should be on the blockchain, but I also believe that it's good for people to throw things on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, and that's a really good point. There's probably something I think in my head that's like this should not be on the blockchain, but I might be surprised by some really creative team or companies like take on that idea and then go, "Oh, well, okay, that's obvious. That actually does make a
Yeah.
lot of sense." And maybe I shouldn't have written that one off. That's a really good point. Um, let's go back to DPin for a second because I want to talk a little bit more about this. So we talked about this decentralized compute. What are some other um, of these decentralized? What does DPin stand for again?
Decentralized physical infrastructure.
Physical infrastructure. What are some other decentralized physical infrastructure um, projects, companies, or ideas that you're looking at?
I mean, okay, there's like LivePeer. They do like video transcoding. So like a lot of the costs for streaming video of the internet is borne by the company streaming it. It's pretty expensive. Like basically, if you look at the growing trend of video, it's something that's been accelerating rapidly over time, right? We've transitioned from text to photos to more and more and more and more video. But transcoding, that's really expensive. And so LivePeer does it a lot cheaper through the same kind of model of like, if you take something and you decentralize it, inherently certain things you can do it a lot cheaper. Airbnb used to be a lot cheaper. Uber, different things like that. Like it makes it more efficient in a lot of ways. And so LivePeer is doing that. Things like Filecoin and storage, those are interesting. Anything taken on AWS is interesting. There's a lot of companies doing that. We mentioned Helium. Outside of those things, those are really the interesting ones. I can't think of anything else off top of head. I know there is other things. I just can't think of it.
Yeah, currently. A few that I'm in, again, Flux and running Flux nodes. I'm in SC Prime, which is decentralized storage. I'm in, I just started running Hive Mapper, which is a camera that goes in your car. It's like a dash cam.
I've seen Hive Mapper.
And it's like Google Maps, Google Street View, but it's decentralized and incentivizes users to run these. I'm also running, obviously, Helium. There's a handful of other ones too.
There's another one I just thought of, Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is a really interesting one. I only know of this one. So I did, you familiar with Syndicator?
No.
Syndicators, they've been doing AI stuff since 2015. Their whole idea was, imagine you got together a bunch of like your nerdiest data scientist friends. And you're like, man, there's got to be a way to take AI and predict what the market's going to do. We all feel this, right? Everyone thinks this, like somebody's going to figure it out. Well, they're like, hey, we have the actual engineering capabilities to do this. And so they built a company around this idea of like, can we use AI to predict what the market's going to do? They did this back in 2015, way before OpenAI and all this was a big deal. And so their concept was AI is built off data. And the better your data, the better your AI. Okay, if you train off dumb, like bad data, it's not going to be good AI. And so they use something called wisdom of the crowd, which is this other concept that like if you take one person and have them guess how many jelly beans are in a jar, they'll struggle. But if you took like 1,000 people and they all guess and you took the average of that guess, it's like eerily close to the right thing. So somehow, like as a group, as a hive mind, we're able to predict things easier. And so they built out a thing where they reward people for like answering questions. And they built it up to over 100,000 analysts. So they'll ask things like, what will the Bitcoin price be on this date? What will the Ethereum price be on this date? Will the market be higher or lower on this date? And this 100,000 analysts, they go through and they do their work and they submit their answer. Okay, the ones that are more the ones that win make a lot of money. The ones that are more often correct, they build up their status, and so their results are weighed more heavily, and they can earn more money for them. But for the AI, it's weighed more heavily. So all that data is collected. It's skewed and weighed based on their past performance. And then they have like a different subset of these analysts that are called super forecasters they're just like, they're right 90% of the time. Like these guys are always on it. That high quality data is then fed into the AI. And the AI uses its model based on that data to spit out a final prediction of like what the actual answer will be. And that's been their concept. And they've been fine tuning it since then. And so I got it's pretty awesome. I geek out over it because I'm like, this is pretty cool.
This is open to people right now? Can you access this?
So they're great at building their products. They're not really great at making money. That seems to be their one struggle, is like, how do they monetize it? So they've tried a few different ways. Early days, they would send you the indicators of like the answers. But they had it all like, this is before I even had a wallet on chain. Like I was brand new to crypto, and you had to have a wallet on chain and stuff like that. So it wasn't not a lot of people used it. Now they do, they have bots that you can run that just basically, you sign up for the bot and then it'll do things based off the predictions answers. And so that's been a whole nother challenge for them where they've been working on that. Their first bot was called Stoic.
Oh, I'm familiar with them then. Yes.
Yes. That first bot, it did good on a bull run, but it didn't do very good in the bear market. But to be fair, it can't short or do any of these things because it didn't have integrations. They've been working a couple years to fix a lot of those things because again, it's kind of a problem within itself. And now they have Stoic Meta, which is like it's basically the version 2 of Stoic. And that one can do shorts, longs, it can leverage. It's pretty crazy. I've been using that one for like 6 months, 5 months. And I had started with 30,000. I have like 50,000 now in the bear market. So it's pretty cool. It does better than my bot strategy. And I wouldn't say that if that wasn't true. So it does. It works really, really well. I haven't tested it over a year, but for how long I've used it, it's been doing good. Anyway, so I got to ask their AI a question. And so they keep trying to get me into like some sort of partnership thing. I don't do any sponsors. That's kind of my thing. But I was like, but we could work out like some sort of thing. So I got to ask it a question. And, they're just assuming, I guess, that I'll make a video about it, which obviously I would because it's a cool concept. So I asked it, what were the top 5 cryptos to 100x next bull run? And one of those cryptos it gave me was the Wi-Fi token. And it was like a $2 million market cap. Tiny. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Is it still $2 million right now?
It might have gone up. It's might be 3 million.
Okay.
It's really hard to get. So the liquidity is really sparse.
I love teeny tiny market cap coins.
They just added a bunch of liquidity on chain though.
Okay.
They just posted on Twitter. I can't go buy more because I'm not at home, but if I was anyway, so what it is the same kind of concept as Helium, but with Wi-Fi. So they want to build. So think about Helium's first like Internet of Things idea. Like nobody even uses the low RAN networks, except for like the scooters all over cities. But none of them even signed up for it. This is the same thing, but like for Wi-Fi network. Like imagine a giant open Wi-Fi network that anyone can access.
What's so funny about what you're saying right now is when I first got introduced to Helium, that's what I thought it was.
That's what I thought it was too.
I'm like, this is so cool. Public Wi-Fi for everybody. You get incentivized for sharing your internet. And then I realized it's IoT. I'm like, okay, well, this is cool too, but not as cool.
That's what Wi-Fi is. Their app already has like millions of downloads. So like imagine Helium, except everyone already used it. Mm-hmm. And their token, they just didn't understand how to put liquidity on chains, and it was during a bear market. That's what that is. So I'm actually pretty bullish on that. Like, I actually have a friend that came down from Canada to here for the conference, and he's using the Wi-Fi app right now on the App Store. It's got like, tons of reviews, like thousands of reviews. Like this is a pretty, you might have it on your phone right now and not know it. And so that's a pretty cool one that I think is like a bullish concept, especially going to the next bull run. Again, it's like Helium hit like 6 billion the market cap. This one's at 3 million.
That's crazy. Have you made a pretty sizable investment into this?
I tried to.
Yeah. Just no liquidity.
So yeah, on chain, I couldn't really buy anything. I tried there's exchanges you could buy on it, but it's like all the ones that like you're not supposed to go on as an American, or you're not supposed, they try not to let Americans on. And so I tried like going on because some of them you could like go on, but you just don't have to KYC.
Yep.
And I was even on there, the liquidities were really sparse, and I got like $800. So I want to buy more.
Yeah. So is this like Helium, and that a user can also
mine it with their Wi-Fi? Yeah.
Okay. I'm as soon as this is done recording, I'm in there buying it. I love this. Is right up my alley.
Yeah. Like I said, they put some more liquidity on chain as far as I know, and somebody did tell me like Bing X or something like that. I've never heard of this exchange, but apparently a lot of people are using it. You can get it on there.
Oh, you and I both get tons of emails from exchanges and stuff. And we partner together, whatever. Bing X is one I've seen. I've never been on their website.
I've never been on it either, so I can't vouch for it, but I've heard you can get it there too.
Okay. What were the other ones that when you asked the AI, what did it tell you?
Got to go watch the video.
When's that video going to come out?
It's already out.
Oh, it's out?
Yeah.
Okay, well then give me one more as a teaser, and then I'll put the link of it in the
another one that they talked about with Sand. So we were talking about GameFi. And actually, when I heard that, I was like, "This is stupid. Like, Sand's too big. It's not
tell
going
me
to
what
100x."
Sand. I've heard the name, but I can't remember what it is.
I always thought of it as a metaverse project.
Yeah.
And so, because, and for me, I'm like, the metaverse was overhyped. That was clear as day. Like, even when it was like at its height, I knew it was overhyped, and it's just a stupid idea. It's too early. We were not ready for it. In the way that they're looking at it with VR and stuff like that. But Sand, the AI viewed it more as like a GameFi play, and what it is essentially like Roblox or Minecraft. And so Roblox does $2 billion in annual revenue. From just because creators can
monster,
creators build games within the platform, and then people go and play those games. And Sand is the same exact concept. You build games, so it's all on the blockchain, and you can own the assets in the games. It's the same concept, and it's quality. Like they've done partnerships with Walking Dead, Paris Hilton. They just did a Hell's Kitchen partnership. Ubisoft. Tons of different companies. So like they seem to be hitting it on all cylinders. They just haven't, and people play the game and they enjoy playing it. So that's another one that's a good one for as a GameFi one that I did actually ended up buying it after the AI like minutes explanation. I was like, okay, I'll buy it.
You can stop there and tell me what they are, but did you end up buying the other ones too?
I ended up buying all 5.
Wow.
And I'll say I did a similar experiment with ChatGPT and Agent GPT. A lot of people like to point out, they're like, ChatGPT only goes up to 2021. I know that. Agent GPT though is like it's basically running different versions of ChatGPT, but it can access the internet. And it's hard to explain, but when you put a prompt into ChatGPT, it's just doing one. It's going off of that one prompt and giving you a response. Agent GPT, you put in a like general goal, and then it's prompting itself. It's asking itself questions to try to get to the goal. So it does all this research and stuff like that. Anyway, I did that to try to do the same thing. What are the top cryptos 100x? And it gave me like 30. But I had it put it in order of like the most likely to least likely. And I didn't buy a single one of those. And so it's not like I just bought it because it was like the AI recommended it. When I did that other experiment with ChatGPT, I thought they were just garbage answers. But these ones were actually good. They had like good reasoning for why it did it. And I think I trust that because it's purpose built for this specific function, and I've used their products to know that like they're not just blowing smoke. Like they do know what they're doing, and the fact that it was like 100,000 analysts that like compiled the original data, all that to be like, yeah, I think I'm gonna buy this. So
I did watch that ChatGPT video of yours, and I thought it was really entertaining. I really enjoyed that video, but I also ended that video by going, I don't want to buy any of these.
Yeah.
So it's saying a lot that if this other one, okay, so I definitely right after this, I'm going to watch that video of yours, and I will link to that down below this podcast. The few people who listen to this compare to the people who watch your video, but I will link to it there to go see the other answers. That's super cool. Well, it seems like you've had really good results with their bot and stuff. And it seems like they have like a good handle on their analyst and AI kind of connection there. So that should be very interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So I would love to kind of end with a couple questions that are more broad. But I feel like just talking to you personally, like not through our videos, but just talking to you and knowing some of the moves you've made crypto wise, I feel like you're someone who has timed. No one times the market perfectly, but I feel like you've done a really good job, all things considered, of timing the market. I feel like you exited a lot of positions at a good time. I feel like you went basically, I don't know, 80% plus. I don't know what the actual percentage was. Almost all in on Ethereum at a good time. When it was around like $1,000 or $1,100 or something, and now it's like $1,500 to $1,600. So I'm kind of curious, how you made those decisions, but then also like how you're looking when you want to start going more heavy into some of the other positions that aren't Ethereum going into the next bull run.
So I will correct you on the Ethereum thing. I did do it good in that I was putting my money into Ethereum and I didn't keep gambling on like a lot of the things people did, but I more DCA'd over time. So I did some at 1,700. I did some at 1,900. I did some at 1,300. I did some at 1,100. I did a good chunk down there.
I feel like that's still a really good preservation of capital.
Yeah. I did preserve my capital really well, and I was proud of that. And I learned to do that because 2017, I didn't do that. Mm-hmm. I sucked at that really bad. And then, so I promised I wouldn't. A couple of my rules were like during the time when people were making the most money. That's when you really had to watch yourself. A lot of the projects that people lost money in, I didn't, because I would take my initial out once it would double or triple. It depended on the velocity. So if it like barely doubled, took it out right away. If it was like skyrocketed to a triple or just skyrocketed to a double, maybe I'd sit on it a little bit more and just kind of closely watch it. But I always, within that little range, took out my initial and just made sure that I was good, that I couldn't lose money. And then as far as, I feel like I could have timed the market a lot better. I feel like, and especially now knowing, I think I made a lot of mistakes. I feel like I did get out of the market at a good time, but I sold most of my stuff into stable coins at a really good actually time, but I stuck it into UST on Anchor. And so like I made good choices, but I made bad choices. I was like technically the right choice, but in the wrong way. Yeah. I ended up getting it out. So like I was talking with another YouTuber at the time who also had a lot of money in there. I had a lot of money. I think at the time it's over $500,000 I had in USD. And it dropped from $1 down to like 70 cents. And then it went back up to 90 cents. And then my friend was like, hey, I'm gonna hold on. It's gonna repeg fully. And I was like, well, I can take a, 8% haircut or, risk it. So I ended up selling everything and then
so smart.
I was.
I remember that move. I remember 70 whatever cents. And I remember, I don't know if I saw 90 cents, but I saw like 88 or 89 cents. And I'm like, feel like I should probably sell right now, but it's going to repeg because I didn't fully understand the history of algorithmic stablecoins at that juncture. Bad on me to not, fully, truly understand. Before the collapse, I had I had 100 grand in UST, and I had sold off half of it before the collapse to buy my first round of Bitcoin miners. Overpaid for my Bitcoin miners, but kept the capital. But the other half I lost completely, went to nothing.
Yeah. See, and anyway, so I made good choices, but I didn't make perfect choices. And I feel like a lot of the reasons I was able to make good choices was one, I went through the ringer once and I felt that pain and I took that feeling and I used that to learn and grow and do better. And I kept incrementally improving myself. But what was the original question? Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. It was just asking like making these moves and like how you kind of thought about these.
Oh, my thought process. Yeah, it really just diving down. Like every time I get burned, I try to learn a little bit more. And every time I make a mistake, I try to do better next time. Mm-hmm. And so, you're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to have failures. You're going to do stupid stuff. Like last cycle, I didn't know enough about crypto to know what was always a scam and what wasn't. I knew I was a good investor and I made smart investing moves, but I wasn't deep into crypto and like all the technology behind it as I am today. UST was a big shelling point for me to be like, I need to understand this more.
Yep, same.
And so that's when I did a deep dive, and I've never stopped. I've been like, man, I need to understand all of this because I realized how much of an advantage it is to understand how stuff works. Because I can look at something and be like, that's a scam, that's a scam, that's a stupid idea, that's a stupid idea, but that's genius, and nobody else can see it because they don't understand the space. But that's going to take over. And so knowledge is just a massive advantage, and all that's freely available. You can go out, you can learn these things, you can listen to podcasts, you can watch YouTube channels, you can go on Twitter. Twitter's a great place to get alpha. You can read through these white papers. All that stuff will pay massive dividends come the bull run because there's going to be, and then understanding that like, this is kind of hard too. You got to understand that like stupid ideas will be successful during bull runs. Yes. And you can play them too.
You can make money with Ponzi schemes during a bull run if you time it right.
And just because something's a stupid idea doesn't mean, if you're trying to make money investing, doesn't mean you shouldn't always get into it. Like, you definitely want to know what you're doing. But my point is that, like, I guess, again, knowledge. The more you learn, the better you get at those things. And that's really all it is. It's not like, just more you learn.
And there's also lots of brilliant ideas that amount to nothing. And that's just the space. Unfortunately, like there's history of our country and the companies that existed within it is littered with fantastic companies, with fantastic people, with fantastic ideas that just didn't pan out. Just weren't there at the right time, didn't have the right mass adopt. There's lots of different reasons why.
It's like, and what people want is they want a clear answer. Like, hey, do this thing, you make money. And what they don't want to hear, this is the truth, is that investing is insanely complicated and there isn't like a do this thing and you make money. It's like playing soccer or basketball or something. Like, I can't be like, as long as you grab the ball and shoot it into the hoop, you win. You know what I mean? Like technically that's true, but like, what do you do when somebody's, guarding you? What do you do when there's three guys guarding you? What do you do? Like there's so many things in basketball that like in that moment you have to know what to do. And it's like each moment requires a different playbook almost, right?
Yep.
That's not like the same play you can run every single time. And so investing is very similar to that. Or like, it's like poker, what I mean? Like every time you have a different hand, things are changing. You have to know how to play the game. And the only way you can learn how to play the game is to start playing the game and get better at it. And I can't tell you like a one-size-fits-all strategy because there isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. Mm-hmm. You just get better at it and you know how to play when you know.
A lot of what you just said is one of the reasons why a core part of my strategy is multiple bets. Like, I don't just want to go across multiple sectors, but I want to do multiple companies and products within a single sector and stuff. Which like DPin is an entire like subset of crypto. It's broken down into how many categories, and each of those categories, the ones I care about or see a lot of value in the future, I want to own like several different, possibilities of success. If I was in the 90s, if I was all about bookstores, I would have wanted not just to own Amazon, but also to own Barnes and Noble and whatever the other third biggest one was, and then hopefully one of those three that I see potential in turns into the Amazon.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you approach it in the same way?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't always know what's going to be the winner. Like right now, I look at like layer twos. I feel confident in for me, I feel like Optimism is going to win, but I still own Arbitrum, and so I guess I don't really have anything else besides Optimism and Arbitrum. But like, I have Polygon and I have Polygon. So it's like I have Polygon, I have Arbitrum, I have Optimism. I don't know which Vision's going to win or if they'll all win. And I might feel like, hey, I want to go in a little bit bigger on Optimism versus Arbitrum and Polygon. But I won't feel like I'm losing if Polygon ends up being the one taken off and Optimism goes to zero, which is unlikely. But I would say one other way that I win big that I think a lot of people don't think about is position sizing. So they see me getting into something, and this took a long time to connect that other people didn't do this. But like when I'll invest in something, I'm not investing like my life savings into like one thing, right? Like even right now, I'm talking about I talked about Wi-Fi, I talked about Sand, different things that I get into and I own. I don't put that much money in it. In fact, I have like my own group where I share different things. I shared my portfolio once, and I got a lot of people shocked because they're like, why do you have so little in all these things? Because the majority of my positions right now are under 1% of my portfolio. Some of them are, probably the majority are actually under 0.5% in my portfolio. I just, right now the markets are too like volatile. I don't know what's going to happen. We could retest the bottom. I don't know. Nobody really actually knows what's going to happen next. I feel like over a longer period of time, it's easier to make a guess, right? Like I couldn't guess, Andy, what you're going to do, with your body or whatever in the next, 5 seconds. I guess I could because you're sitting right there, but there you go.
Did you see that coming?
Yeah.
Did you predict that?
But point is, over short term period of time, it's harder to predict what's going to happen over a long term. Like over a long period of time, it's easier to predict what might do. Like, over a long period of time, you're going to wake up, you're going to eat, you're going to go sleep, different things like that. I feel like my analogy is falling apart, but.
Well, I think there's a core truth you talked about just now that I've tried to, make sure I'm conscious of explaining on my channel and stuff and in my Discord and stuff. That is, if you watch one of our videos and we say, there's people who are way bigger fish than us in the world. But, if you're talking about like $100,000, something like that, but we say, oh, we invested 10,000 or we invested 5,000, we invested 1,000 into this crypto. Someone who only has $5,000 in total to invest, they might go, okay, wow, they put, a lot. They put 1/5 of my whole stack in there. I guess I got to do the same. Whereas it might only be 0.5% of our entire portfolio that just went into that thing. So it's all about context and like conceptualizing exactly where that fits in. So we might be bullish on something, but it might still be, a fraction of a percent of the overall thing, depending on what our future view is.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe a better analogy, now I'm thinking about it, would be, if you're looking at the city of Austin, if you're to try to predict what's going to happen tomorrow in Austin, that's really difficult to do. To predict is there going to be a shooting? Is there going to be, some sort of crazy car accident, or is a bridge going to collapse or whatever. But if you look at like over the next 10 years, what do you think is going to happen in Austin? It's a lot easier to make predictions about the things that'll happen over that timeline. Austin's going to get bigger. It's going to build more infrastructure. Probably going to see more roads, more businesses move here, more sky rises go in. Like those sort of like big picture things are easier to predict than the minute details, the shorter term details. And so with investing, it's the same thing, where I don't really know what's going to happen in a month or 2 months with a price of Bitcoin or Ethereum. But over the next couple of years, it's a lot easier for me to be like, yeah, it's going to go. You're going to see more adoption. You're going to see it go up. And so I like to think over those timeframes and like position myself in a way that I can benefit most from that. So like, I don't know if Optimism or Polygon will be around in 3 years. Like I'm pretty sure they will be, but I don't know for a fact. But do I think Bitcoin and Ethereum, like, do I feel very confident in that? Yes. And so, do I feel like they'll be at a higher price? Yes. So I put most of my money there because that's where my risk reward, like that's where the cards fall right now, where I feel like the risk makes sense versus the reward. And, that all aligns. But as the bull market starts creeping in, the risk reward's going to fluctuate more to these altcoins like Optimism, like Polygon, where I'm going to want more and more capital in it. Luckily, the way the crypto cycle normally works is Bitcoin traditionally goes up first. And my thesis this time around is going to be Bitcoin and Ether are going to go up first. Ether had not had the ability of having like a longer history like Bitcoin had it during the last cycle. It was brand new. It didn't have this entire ecosystem built around it. ETH also didn't have, it hadn't survived through a winter phase in the same way that Bitcoin had over and over again. And so now that ETH has, and it's shown that it's had about the same pullback as Bitcoin has during this winter, I think it's going to have about the same draw up as the bull market starts. And usually, if you remember last cycle, Bitcoin skyrocketed and everyone's like, oh, the altcoins are going to go up. And they never did. And people are like, what's going on? And we're getting frustrated. It's not going to work this time. It's not going to go the same. And then eventually they skyrocketed and people made way more money with that. But Bitcoin went up first. So if you add your money in Bitcoin first and then rolled it into those altcoins, you can have made a lot more money. And I think it's going to be about the same because that's how it goes. Bitcoin goes up, ETH goes up, it generates interest. People are like, oh, and they don't want to miss out. They start putting their money into Bitcoin, Ether. It goes even higher. And then people who see that go up, they're like, well, I missed out on Bitcoin and ETH. They're already really high. But what about these other things? What about this? And then they start investing their money into that. So then the people that have their money in Bitcoin and ETH start rolling it in. And so when they go down, the people that are waiting on the sidelines for Bitcoin and ETH, they push it back up, keeping the price up. And it's this whole little cycle, but it just makes sense psychologically to me that like Bitcoin and ETH first, most of my money there, but I'm placing bets in the other ones because there's always one or two alts that just skyrocket. BNB was last time. BNB was already just a mammoth. My father-in-law tried to convince me to put like $1,000 in it. He put like 100 or 500 and it turned into like 100,000. So
I remember $2 and $3 BNB. Yeah. And then I remember watching it go to like $600 or $700 or $800, whatever it went to. And like,
so my positions are mostly to try to catch those things. Mm-hmm. But they're not really to take up a full position yet. Yep. Not until, and which I'm glad, like some of these positions I've taken up, I'm down like 30%, 50%. Others though, I'm up 200%. So it's like, actually my highest conviction ones have wiped out any losses I took from some of my other ones. Most of them I put like, between $1,000 to $5,000. There's a couple though, I stuck like 20 grand in, and those ones ended up doubling or tripling, and they made up for all the losses that I had in the other ones. And so again, if you play the game well enough, you can still even make money despite those things. And I think that's where a lot of people don't understand, like it's a lot of weird math, and it's a lot of, you making sure that you have a risk strategy that makes sense. That's going to make it less likely for you to lose, but you're able to capitalize on some of the winnings, and not to get too greedy trying to catch everything, not to get too greedy trying to make a fortune by throwing all your life savings into one token, because that's how you lose everything. You need to play the long game, not the short game. Everyone plays the short game. And if you're doing that, you're just playing like the average person, and you're going to get the average person's result. If you play the long game, you're playing, like not like an average person, and that's how you win.
Yeah, I love that. So will you do what you just said into this next bull cycle? Will you take the majority of your money that's currently in Ethereum and maybe in a Bitcoin as well, and on its up, sell, and then go into a bunch of other positions and try to ride those up?
Probably not all at the same time, but yeah, it's even right now. I was at about 90% of my portfolio. I'm down to like 80 8% of my portfolio is in ETH. So I'm slowly, ratcheting it into little positions here and there. And then I'm like ones that I'm doing deeper research and I get higher conviction on, I'm putting more money into those ones over time. And so, yeah, it's just slowly over time, DCAing, but not really like on a schedule, more on, research. And then I guess part of it is sort of like an intuition or a feeling of like staying up to date with the market and just like watching what's happening and saying, okay, it feels like we're getting closer. This feels similar to what it felt like in 2019 or, different things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of doing that. I kind of do the same thing, but I don't do it from some of those positions. I've been so passive income focused and stuff. I have all these miners and nodes and things. I take a lot of those monthly rewards and I sell those, and those buy me new positions that are interesting to me and stuff. That's kind of my cash flow. Now, we're talking about this whole going into the next bull run, so I have to ask the question of, Jesse, when's the bull run? When does it start? When does this happen?
See, I wish I knew exactly.
You need to tell me exactly. You need to tell me right now.
I have my thesis, which I think is a very... Some people point out that almost everyone in the industry believes this, therefore it can't be true, because with markets, if everyone believes it, it's usually the wrong one. But I like to point out that like the industry, the people that are involved right now is like less than 0.5% of the planet. Like it's so small. So most people actually don't believe this.
Last bull run during peak, everything's happening, euphoria, worldwide active wallets across all chains and all cryptos was something like 350 million out of 8 billion people. And now we're in a bear market, and so that percentage is like infinite. It's like teeny.
Yeah.
Just to give some context, what you just said.
Super small. But I think, if you look at it historically, 100% of the time, the Bitcoin halving has kicked off an epic bull run. Mm-hmm. This has never not happened. Never once in all of history. That's not enough for me to be like, oh, it's going to for sure happen. But it is definitely like you're betting against something that's with 100% probability. Then you look at the ETFs coming in. You have the BlackRock ETF. You have, they're now filing for ETH ETFs. And the likelihood of those by analysts in the market is like upwards of 70% for like Q1, but like just to be done like completely is like 90% for some of them. And then
throw out the halvening batting average. Look at BlackRock's ETF approval batting average, 576 total put forward. Only one rejected,
and the one rejected was absolutely insane. It should have been rejected because it was like it is pretty wild. If you look into it, you're like, well, duh. That like they really threw that one out.
I just can't imagine betting like that. The BTC or ETH or any other ETFs are not going to happen.
And then on top of that, you have the election cycle coming up. People are in more debt than ever. Affordability of housing and different things like that is the worst than it's ever been. You look on TikTok, you look on Facebook, people are complaining more and more about not being able to afford groceries, barely making ends meet. These sort of things I look at and I pay a lot of attention to because at what point does the election heat up and simply become who's going to give us the most free money? Because that's what it was last election, and nobody's forgotten that. Everyone is still reeling from COVID. And, that's if you want to win and you don't care about printing money, why wouldn't you do that?
Do you think those factors you just said, debt, paycheck to paycheck, housing prices being higher than ever, do you think that also is to the advantage of these things, and that a lot of people are like, I want to make a bunch of money as soon as possible, and they're not that I advocate for this. I hope this doesn't happen, but do you see that as just crowd thinking, like chasing the herd, like I got to get rich with everybody else, so even though I don't have much money, this is my one chance to get rich?
I think some people will do that, but it's more me looking at those things and thinking, how's the government going to respond? If people want these problems fixed. I'm sure you've heard the song Richmond, North of Richmond. That's the sentiment right now. People are upset. They're hurt. They're frustrated. And typically the government likes to solve that by printing a bunch of money. They also like to solve that by lowering interest rates because that puts more liquidity in the system and that makes things go better for the average person. And so I think those two things we have a high likelihood of seeing soon, just because of, the election cycle coming up. And so that with the ETFs, with the halving, for me, I see 2024, 2025, just like it's always been, we're going to see the same 4-year cycle. That's my personal opinion.
I think the Bitcoin ETF was the one missing component of the last bull run that stopped Bitcoin from going over 100,000.
Yeah, the ETFs can. I mean, yeah.
I don't think people fully understand what a Bitcoin, or I mean, especially Bitcoin, because that one just has the most track record right now for just really traditional investors. But Ethereum ETF too. But like, what the power is behind that all of a sudden everyone in the entire United States, if their brokerage allows that ETF to be traded, which almost all of them will, and their Fidelity and their Vanguard brokerage, Roth IRA, 401k, take your pick, can now have spot price, meaning exact exchange price exposure to Bitcoin, 1-for-1. It's like the floodgates.
Yep.
So I think that anybody who dismisses that, or dismisses the halvening, or dismisses the government's propensity to print as much money as they possibly can to make everyone happy, like, it's grossly underestimated.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, well, I think that's a great place to end this. I think that's a positive note. Next bull run, Jesse just predicted it and said 2024, 2025, it's definitely guaranteed, 100% going to happen. Otherwise, he will money back guarantee on that one.
Money back guarantee.
This has been super fun. I love all the things we just talked about. Thank you very much for coming into my house and geeking out with me for a little while, talking to me about this stuff.
Thank you for having me in your house.
Yes. I will put all the links to all of Jesse's stuff. I mean, if you're watching my podcast, you know who this guy is, but I'll put all that stuff down in the description anyways. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.